We have had some fun experiences. Like I accidentally converted a player to a negative review by giving him what he asked for.
Yeah.
Where he was like, "Hey,
Nice.
why don't you add this to the game?" And I was like, I replied, I was like, "Yep, that's coming. Like, that's coming right in the next update. Tomorrow or whatever it was coming out." So then he got the new update. It was exactly what he wanted, and then he went and left a negative review. And he was like, "That just proves that they purposely released an unfinished
Been
game
here the whole time.
Yeah, they purposely released an unfinished game, and now they're scrambling to fix it. I'm like, what are we doing?
What are we doing here, folks?
So that'll happen. That happens.
Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 553 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the weekly podcast for indie game developers. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Sam, and I'm their taste.
And we are Butterscotch Shenanigans. Today is December 12th, 2020 vibes. But this episode's coming out on December 31st, which is the last day of the year. And what that means is year in review episode.
Review time.
Let's recap what happened this year. We're going to kind of talk through what our journey was, kind of where we were at the start of the year, stuff that we tried, stuff we were thinking, stuff we did, how that went, things that went well, things that didn't go that well, and why. And then we'll talk a little bit about maybe what next year's going to bring. Although our next episode will be kind of our first of the year, more future oriented, but we'll kind of we'll throw a few lines out of this to kind of get people thinking about it. So let's set the stage.
Yeah, where were we back on December 31st, 2024? What was happening?
So end of 2024, we were still a few months out from our target launch date for Crashlands 2. We kind of knew at that point that we were going to be releasing it in April of 2025. But the game wasn't done. So we still had a lot of work to do. I'm pretty sure I just kind of jammed over most of the break. Because Crashlands 2 had this kind of, not a problem, but it's just kind of a feature of the way that the game works is, oh boy, is it hard to test. Because, and not just in terms of like, are things working? That's no problem. The real problem is testing whether it's good, like whether it's fun, because it's a big ass narrative driven story game with tons of like progression, and you linearly move through all these parts of the game, which means if you want to ask the question like, is Act 3 fun? Yeah. Well, you got to get through Act 1 and Act 2 and then play Act 3 in order to actually play Act 3 in the way that a player would experience. So you got to dump like 20 hours of playing this game into it before you can start to answer the question of whether Act 3 is landing, right?
Yeah. So I think at this time, there's still a bunch of art to do. I was just pounding the pavement on the art. I think I'd been doing that basically the whole year prior, 2024, all the way into, I think I did my first like big playthrough of the game at the end of, or like middle of February or something like that. So I was still a few weeks out from that. There's just tons of work going on. Localization was happening, just infinite work. But we had decided on that launch plan, right? I mean,
Yeah, this was a month after having been dropped by Netflix. So we had to kind of scramble for our mobile launch plan to decide what we were going to do, because originally for the whole year and a half before that or something, we were a Netflix title for mobile.
We didn't need a mobile launch plan.
We didn't need to know it. We were just like, they're in charge of that. We just have to get them a build and hit our milestones on time. That's it. That was our job. And then all of a sudden we had to be like, oh no, now we have to figure out how to be successful on mobile on our own too. Yeah. Right. So we were scrambling to figure out all of that at this same time.
As part of Netflix's new do random stuff strategy.
Which they're continuing to this day.
Which they're still just like acquiring things and dropping things and buying entire companies for $80 billion and then shutting down game studios. I don't know. Stuff's just happening.
Random stuff. Yeah.
So we were part of that. We were part of their journey of self-exploration, and I'm glad to have been able to be of service.
Yeah. So then we headed into basically the first quarter of the year, and a handful of things happened. Right. Obviously, that's all the lead up for Crashlands 2. Was just that whole period. So
yeah,
very intense. I think Adam was about to die because he was just managing the localization stuff. All of the like external marketing plan.
Yeah,
like
we
basically
were
talking to
all
everybody.
about to die, but my work was so antithetical to how my brain works and my interest, because it was keep track of 1,000 details that I have to ask 1,000 questions all the time about because I don't have
more
any
specifically,
answers.
keep track of like 1,000 email threads was kind
Just,
of what it comes
email
down
threads,
to.
keep on top of the calendar, and you have to figure out like who's doing what. They're like, what is the sequence of events that has to happen? Like, what are the dates for? It was just a lot
which spawned what comes later in 2025, which we'll get into. But
I think we're basically 4.5 years deep on Crashlands development at this point. All of us are very tired. Been working our little buns to the bones, and then we get to launch day. It was kind of what was happening. It was just working.
Yeah, so pretty much nothing happened until like we did our beta. We did a closed beta with I think like 100 people. Like a month before launch
maybe?
or something
It was
like that.
It was a little over 100 people. Yeah.
Yep. And that went well. We got a lot of good player feedback. Some stuff was like a little bit. We were like, yeah, we need to work on that, but we won't be able to get it in by launch because, one of the positives of releasing a game in a bunch of languages is you get a big audience potentially. The downside is everything you do has a delay to it because you're like, okay, well, we can add this feature right now, like today, and then we can get it into players' hands in 3 weeks because you got to send it off to your 12 different localization teams, one for each language, and then each one is on a different timeline and it's different questions. Get it back in, test it, blah blah
etc.
And so we got some good feedback and lots of bug fixes and stuff on the beta, and then we started kind of like revving up. We kind of locked in our launch version, and then we started revving up what we were going to do for our first content update just before launch.
Yeah.
So
and the
launched
launch
in April.
Yeah, it launched in April, and the launch itself went very, very well. It was the biggest launch we've ever had. What was our peak concurrency? It was like
our peak concurrency was 8571, 8,500 players.
Huge.
On Steam.
We got good reviews. So we got 4.9 out of 5 on mobile, and we're still there. Just kind of chilling at like near perfect score, which is
amazing.
Pretty good.
Kind of insane.
Steam, and as a side, like related to that, when Apple announced all their new Apple stuff for in September, whenever this fall, including their new like games app and stuff, right? Crashlands 2 was one of their like feature graphics that was just on everything, to the point where yesterday or this week, Sam and I were looking for some pictures of just like, what does the games app look like? So we just did like an internet search, and the first thing that came up was a picture of the games app with Crashlands 2.
Yeah, it's all over.
Yeah, Apple has been using our Crashlands 2 box art to market
just everywhere,
to market their games app like the entire latter half of the year.
Which big shout out to Eric Hibbler, who's the one who's painted those pieces for us and did a great job. Bang up job.
So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So the launch was really great in terms of like that initial peak and stuff, and then the initial reviews are also very, very high, and that's just kind of the first bolus of people coming in.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, so we had 4.9 on mobile. We did have 85% on Steam, so we had a low review score on Steam, which we were determined to correct because we were like.
Yeah, it was mostly because on Steam we have we have a larger player base on Steam than on mobile of original Crashlands, also of Crashlands 2, but original Crashlands in particular. And those players also, because people just play games more on if they get them on Steam than they do on mobile, So that's also where like the most intense fans are, the most hardcore fans are. So they were the ones who had the most opinions about, and I guess, and probably most importantly, our Crashlands 2 audience on Steam was mostly propelled by Crashlands 1, like wishlist driving for Crashlands 1. Steam showed the pop-up to Crashlands 1 players, like all that.
So they had a specific set of demands.
Yeah, versus mobile, which is basically because mobile doesn't have a way to tell people that games exist, right? Or that, hey, there's a sequel to this game that you like. So the mobile players is largely a fresh audience, right? And so a fresh audience coming to Crashlands 2 was like, hell yeah, best game I've ever played. A Crashlands 1 audience coming to Crashlands 2 is like, this isn't Crashlands though, right? And so that's where that 15% gap appeared.
This different game is a different game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we decided, well, we made all these decisions about the sequel based on trying to expand the audience, which we clearly did, right? In terms of like overall player base stuff. But we wanted to try and bring a number of those things back in that the player base was wanting to see from the original. So over the next 5 months, how long was it?
6 months. Yeah, we basically wrapped up our content updates on September 25th, which was when our final update went out. So I think that was five and a half ish.
Okay. Yeah. So over 5.5 months, then we released 3 very large content updates. The scope of which was everything from like the compendium being added back into the game. So just like some UI and collection related things to, I think we added like 20% more landmass into the game. To add to a variety of these other kind of harvesting areas, strange creatures for some kind of end game, juice foraging, yeah, and then a ton of bosses.
5 new bosses, 2 new equipment sets, 50% more gadgets and trinkets, new pets,
another creature, pets,
bunch of new like furniture and base building items. I mean, it was basically like we would just read people's reviews and read conversations people were having. And we're like, here's what people want. All right. Add it to the pile, and we'll get it in the next update.
And so, like we really swung for the fences on Crashlands 2 in terms of like the total scope of that thing, all the changes we made, like trying to bring up the quality, etc. And it's true that you could think you're done with a game before you give it to your audience, and then you find out the remaining pieces. Right? We've always said that. It's always been the case, and
there is a line because like, if players like something, they will never stop asking for more of it.
Yes.
Right. And so like, there's to this day, even though we spent 6 months just adding content for free with, it's not a DLC. We just added it to the game.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, if you like pop into our Discord almost every day, somebody's coming in and they're like, when's the next update? When are you going to add more stuff? When are we going to get this?
It'll never end. Because it's like original Crashlands 10 years later.
Yeah, we get questions about Quadrupus Rampage getting content updates, right? It's like, if people like something, they just want more of it. And
it's a good signal, even though it can get a little annoying.
Yeah, so we did manage to, and this is a really big deal, at least to me personally, which I'm sure you guys feel the same, but we did manage to get up over overwhelmingly positive reviews as of now on Steam.
Yeah, for our recent reviews.
It's
almost a 10% swing because it's 88% to 96%, right? So like it's a huge swing in sentiment players don't, no matter what a player tells you in their review where they say, hey, if you do this, I'll update my review. Players never update their reviews. So we can't convert the old backlog of only very positive reviews to overwhelmingly positive, but it looks like the future ones are now overwhelmingly positive. So given enough time, we can shift the whole thing.
I mean, we have had some fun experiences. Like I accidentally converted a player to a negative review by giving him what he asked for. Where he was like, hey, why don't you add this to the game? And I was like, I replied, I was like, yep, that's coming. Like, that's coming right in the next update, tomorrow or whatever it was coming out. So then he got the new update. It was exactly what he wanted. And then he went and left a negative review. And he was like, that just proves that they purposely released an unfinished game.
Been here the whole time.
Yeah, they purposely released an unfinished game, and now they're scrambling to fix it. I'm like, what are we doing?
What are we doing here, folks? Yeah, so we weathered that. Honestly, but we weathered that because it's launching a game is hard, just like from a logistics standpoint. Emotional aspects, regardless, very, very fucking hard.
Well, especially if you've been working on a game for 4.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you thought through every little teeny tiny detail of it to the best you can, and then you get it out there and I don't know, like we've talked about trying to get away from the business model of huge games just because of the cost, but also like for me, it's actually not just about that. It's also like the emotional cost because you get so personally invested in something that you've spent longer than a college degree getting. And then to have somebody pop in, play it for like 12 minutes and be like, this fucking sucks. And then just walk away and you're like, damn it. Like, what did I need to do to get to win that person over?
Yeah. I mean, we managed to weather all that. And again, it's like, it wasn't mostly negative. It's just, the negative pieces always, as a person creating stuff, they really stand out. And some of the framing of some of them is very painful framing, right? For a person who makes stuff. And so we managed to stick them out, read through the lines and everything. And honestly, like I'm very impressed that we managed to swing that review score that hard. I didn't realize actually, we didn't even know this had happened, right? Steam doesn't like send us a note if it's like, hey, you've switched. So I think I saw it randomly like last week. Because I was looking at the store page to get some.
Yeah, one of you two mentioned it, and I was like, "Oh, cool!" But I also had no idea.
Yeah, I was like, "Hey, did you guys know this?" We're like, "Oh, shit!"
Again, to be clear, this is our recent reviews because, like these guys are saying, people don't go back and change their review scores.
So that's a huge win. Very proud of that one. We're very good at making games. very good at making games. I think we're very good at handling feedback and stuff, even if the emotional side of it requires plenty of process.
Yeah. You can be
Or
good at a
therapy.
thing you don't like doing, which
And, and you can still admit that it's hard.
and it's hard. and,
Very hard
it does psychic damage that we have to also recover from, and the whole thing. Yeah.
Yes. So we finished all of that in September, and as part of that post-launch plan, to what we mentioned about Adam's experience, like in the pre-launch phase for Crashlands 2 being very challenging mentally, we changed up what Adam's doing. Adam, what are you doing? What have you even been doing now? For
What
the
do
last
you
6 months?
even do?
What would you say you do here?
So what was going on was basically Crashlands 2, a truly enormous game, huge scope. And we wanted to say we needed to protect the people making the game's time just as much as possible. So the idea, I don't know, like 2023 or 2022, we were like, okay, let's just put me on, I'm in charge of everything else, including trying to sell the game, right? But like literally everything that isn't making the game is now my responsibility. And so then I was doing that for the last 2 or 3 years of Crashlands 2 development. I wasn't well positioned for that job because the person best positioned for that job is the one making the game, because you know everything about the game and all that kind of stuff, right? But I was a person who had time, right? So that was basically the motivation. And in the first, like, I don't know, year and a half of that or whatever, we were, like we were talking about in our last episode, we weren't telling people about what we were doing. We were keeping it all secret. It was all private. So there wasn't really stuff that I had to do. Yeah, it was kind of like keep on top of some business development conversations and keep those negotiations ongoing. But that's that's this really slow ping-pongy kind of stuff where somebody says, hey, what if we give you this much money? And then you're like, a week later, you're like, no, how about this much? And then 2 weeks later, they're like, I talked to my team, whatever. It's just that kind of stuff. You got to stay on top of it, but it's not that big. So I got to kind of do the stuff that I still enjoy doing, which was making software to support the Crashlands 2 development process. Made some cool stuff during that time. And then as we got into the last 6 months became like very intensely about, we got to sell this thing now.
It's just logistics. It's like lining up so many fucking things.
Yeah,
and like
so much stuff.
Well, and like we've talked about in some of our prior episodes about marketing and stuff, everything we did to approach Crashlands 2 marketing was trying to create events, which means like you're gonna sit on a lot of information for a long time, and then you're gonna carefully craft like a new trailer, a new thing, a new video, never before seen this or that, and then you have an embargo and you reach out to 1,000 YouTubers and streamers and press people, and you try to coordinate who has which Steam key, and it's just like every part of it is a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
And then of course somebody breaks the embargo, because that happens every single time. And then you got to scramble and figure that out, and what are the consequences of this? And so like because of how hard all that was, not only did Adam pivot away from the admin stuff, we also pivoted our entire approach to marketing, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, pivot all of it, right? So so the last 6 months were just brutal, and again, like the whole team was working really hard, so it was brutal for everybody. The brand of brutalness for me was like just how frustrating it was to be doing something that was incompatible with I couldn't do the best job of it because I wasn't well positioned to do it, and that's just constantly frustrating. Because most of them just like being like, "Hey, can we do this?" And everyone's like, "No," and then that's basically my job, is to be like, "Hey, I think we need to do this," and then everyone's like, "We don't have time though," and then I'm like, "What am I doing here?" It's like that kind of a thing. Or in order to do this, I need this. And everyone's like, "Well, we don't have time." So it was a frustrating kind of job to have, but that was then coupled with I wasn't doing what I actually like doing at all. Like I like building software. That's the kind of stuff that I want to be doing, And so then it was just basically like 6 months of only doing stuff I don't like and not doing stuff I do like, and not even being able to do the thing that I didn't like doing with a high efficacy, right? So very frustrating final 6 months. And so we got Crashlands 2 out, got to take a breath, and I was like, I don't want to be doing any of that. It's like anymore. But that went along with our whole pivot to say we want to make smaller games faster because of where the market is. We were all so exhausted from Crashlands 2. We all agreed that the best people to be doing marketing and all the stuff around the games are the people making the games, which are Sam and Seth. And so it made sense to say, okay, let me go off and keep on doing the work to support the studio from a tooling and software standpoint, but let's try to tackle a few things at once by doing that, like I have been doing, but with a focus on releasing that stuff as software we actually sell to people.
Yeah.
To
So
see
the
if we
idea
can-
here is basically saying, a lot of the challenge in working on a game, frankly, of any duration, but certainly on big games, is just the fact that, every month you're just burning money while you're trying to make this thing happen, and it's always a gamble. And so the question we had was, okay, Adam really wants to get kind of more buckled into the software development side of things. And how can we do that in a way that actually we're able to leverage, not just for the game making, but for giving us a bottom line somewhere, regardless of how a game does, right? To maybe be able to pull on.
Creating new revenue streams, right? So that we're a little less dependent on how fickle the games industry is and
but also kind of we were always developing tools to solve our own problems. It's like, what if that was part of our business model, not just solving our own problems, but like selling those solutions to other people?
Yes.
And like,
and it's also something that fits my, because I like to make stuff that I get to see other people use. And when it's only our own team, because like a lot of the stuff that I made, like only Sam uses, right? Or whatever. Like the audience is so small for the kind of stuff that I make. And it's a lot more fun when other people use it. And I really like talking about like the weird technical stuff. And I like writing, articles about, okay, here's how to think about doing this thing that we all have to do. And here's the rationale for it or whatever. But I get my audience is like,
internal at max.
Sam reads the thing I wrote once, and that's it, right?
I'm like, nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then we did that now. So I like being able to deliver information to people, and I like being able to deliver tools to people, and it's very fun for me to have that be a more broad thing. So this basically allows me to do all the things that I like to do that like keep me going, keep me motivated, keep my brain in line,
And the tooling that's going from this is all wrapped up in this package called LudoKit. So you go to ludokit.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there to get alerted when we'll be sending out some first round invites, which actually we probably will be doing very soon.
It'll be
next
early,
couple weeks, months.
Early in the year. Yep.
That was part of our plan. Was basically by the end of the year is have something that we could have people actually involved with, and we do actually have some external people, not just on our team, who are already in it. It's been growing and growing and growing. It's awesome. It's great. It does a bunch of great stuff for us. Makes all of our lives easier on just like the launching part of games, the like administrative aspect of platform hosting and publishing a game. And every time we run into something, we're just like,
put in
LudoKit in there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like kind of a fun new feature that we've got in LudoKit that we've been playing around with this past week is the planner, which is like one of the big challenges with launching a game or planning a game or whatever is this combination of like, how much time do you have to do stuff? When are things happening? But also having certain things that need to happen in relation to other things. So
sort of floating things where it's like a release date's a good example, right? Like we think we have a tentative plan to have a release date be whatever, something, right? But usually when you're planning your release dates, you're making a guess like 6 months in advance, years in advance even, because you're trying to work with a publisher and you're like, here's our target launch date, right? So it's all secret, but you have to know what it is and you have to keep track of it. You have to decide, you have to constantly be deciding like, can we make it? How much time is that between now and then, right?
And you need to basically back compute from that release. And this is something that, again, like this is a big part of Adam's work, like to get Crashlands 2 out the door is like, figuring out, all right, if our target, when did we launch Crashlands? April 10th?
April 10th. Yep.
Yeah. It's like Liberation Day. When everything went great. Yeah. So we were like, okay, if this is our target date, then we need to have the translated text back some number of like work days before that.
And we need to be submitted to Apple some number of work days before that.
Submit to Apple. We need to have sent localization text off to our translators a couple of weeks before that, and then blah blah. It's like, all right, well, what if you shift the release date by a week? Then you got to back compute everything else again and figure out like all right, what are all of our new dates, right? So LudoKit is doing some cool stuff where we were like, all right, first we have this idea of like relative dates. So it's like, here's our target launch date, and we say, okay, we need to be like submitted to Apple review 5 work days before that. And we just set that up as a relative event. So wherever we put the launch date, it'll just tell us.
Follows.
It'll just tell
us moves with it.
And then also you can like compute things based on work days or calendar days, and you can set up like holidays and breaks and weekends and whatever else in there. So it gives you a much clearer picture of exactly how much time you actually have to get stuff done and how much time to give things.
And then if you
which is useful from an understanding how much time you have standpoint, but also for that scheduling part, it's really nice because if you're like, oh yeah, we need, because it's not that you need 2 weeks before your release date. It's not that stuff has to have happened 2 weeks before. It's that some number of actual work days, right? Because the work, it's representing work that has to happen, right?
Yes. All right. So we just had a quick deviation. Sam had to go take care of a baby thing. So
baby interruption.
We'll have an awkward clip here, but that's all right. So we were just talking about kind of LudoKit stuff and the planning, how everything kind of fits together with the workday planning, stuff like that. So overall, like we're very excited about this thing. We're kind of dog fooding LudoKit as we're developing How Many Dudes. So we're using LudoKit to help us in our How Many Dudes development and launch prep and all that stuff, which isn't to say we're not launching How Many Dudes for quite some time. But we're kind of addressing all of these struggles and difficulties, whether it's like planning or figuring out store page assets or whatever it is, and we're solving those problems in LudoKit. So
like what is it? Because we get to, it's the beauty of doing like building it while we're working on How Many Dudes, is that we just run into the same problems that we'll run into for the next game, and also that everybody else runs into when they're trying to get their game set up. So even getting the demo stuff set up, we got to, because I made the stuff that we learned we would need as we were setting up the store page, and then we needed to put the demo page together, and then all of a sudden we got to see like, okay, did this work? Because now we got to use it. The first time we just knew what needed to happen. The second time we got to see if it worked, right? And discovered a whole new set of things. We're like, oh yeah, this like, it was very helpful, but now here's a bunch of stuff that's missing that needs to get shored up, right?
Yeah. And if we were working on How Many Dudes in the way that we worked on Crashlands 2, we wouldn't be able to answer these questions for another 4 years, right?
Yep.
But like moving fast, which let's talk a little bit about the How Many Dudes pivot, because we talked about the Crashlands 2 stuff. We worked on it for 6 more months. We got our review scores turn around on all, like on Steam over to overwhelmingly positive. And so we're like, okay, we've got everything in there. The game's done. Like it's
moving on.
We're time to move on. So what next? And we kind of did like a little post-mortem, and we thought back through working on Crashlands 2, what was fun about it, what worked, what didn't work, what was hard, what was easy. And we kind of settled on the same answer that actually it seems like a lot of other indie devs have settled on right around the same time, which is like making huge games over a really long period of time is way too risky. It's too hard. It's too expensive. What if you could make a game that is just as successful, just as fun, has just as much reach, but it takes a third of the time, a fifth of the time? In the case of How Many Dudes, we're aiming for even like maybe a tenth of the time of what worked for Crashlands 2. And so, can you do that? And if so, why not?
We were all basically just tired, I think. And we looked around, and there were so many of these games popping off on Steam in particular that were essentially like very much so the scope of the games that we made 10 years ago. In terms of
for me, the two were like Vampire Survivors and Brotato, where like I see Vampire Survivor and I'm just like, I'll pick it up and try it because like it's hideous, right? It just doesn't look that good. I picked it up, I played it, and I just found myself I play it for several hours. I'm just like, okay, I get it, right? Like it's that kind of like loop driven, not fully idle. Like there's still like decisions you're making and you're playing the game and doing stuff, but it's not like a turbo fast twitch, super skill based intense kind of a game. But very satisfying, very fun. And you can see why it took off. And then same thing with looking at like that at the game Brotato, where it's the same kind of vibe where like there's not that much like in terms of like unique enemy assets or whatever else, but they just kind of like took a fun mechanic and just added a trillion loops and tweaks and mutators to it and stuff.
Yeah, it feels more like playing like old, like 2004
old Flash
games.
games. Almost,
Yeah. Well, and I think importantly, back when we started putting games on Steam with original Crashlands in 2016, games like these like the Steam audience was allergic to them, right? Like they
yeah.
couldn't.
The Steam audience they were gamers.
Yeah, you couldn't be successful
with
with
a capital
like that,
G.
but yeah, something changed about what people expect on Steam, and I don't know what drove that. Probably just a lot of things going on.
I think it's partially potentially a generational thing, which is like the people who started like on Steam when we started on like playing games on Steam.
Hardcore gamers, basically.
Yeah, like grew up in the era of like games are AAA. Games are these big thing, and like there was no real such thing as an indie game when we were growing up. They were either big or didn't exist.
Well, I think also at the time we were doing it, there was this. People were really mad about mobile games, like really mad about them.
Yeah, so anything that had a whiff of mobile to it.
It's just the slightest hint that maybe this could, not even that it was a mobile game, but that it had like because there was stuff like I remember we would see games would be like, oh, these buttons are really big. This is just a mobile game or whatever. Like just weird stuff like that. Yeah. And people were so mad about mobile's monetization practices, how predatory it was. I mean, it still is. But I think that's something that people have just like, people were at that time wanting to be able to take gaming seriously on mobile. And mobile was a hellscape for games, right? And they were just mad about it. And I think today everyone's given up. They've given up on the idea that like mobile could be a place where
I think it might even just be like it's just a different group of people, right? It's like there's
there's
people who grew up playing mobile games who are now, in their mid-20s, right?
Yep.
And when they think they've been playing like Clash of Clans and all this other stuff, right? And it's like or even like even how Fortnite looks. Like Fortnite has like a more cartoony kind of a vibe to it, right? It doesn't take itself super seriously. And so I think over the past decade, a lot of games and a lot of cultural changes and tech changes and just the passage of time has kind of like shifted the demographics of like who's thinking about what and why. And on something like Steam, you have games like Vampire Survivors or Brotato or like just these games that are like, they're lacking polish and they kind of have that Flash game vibe, but they're just like, you pick them up and they're just fun as fuck. Yeah. You can play them for like 100 hours. And
I think you only need a little bit of like somebody who is kind of allergic to these things, right? You only need a little bit of evidence that like, oh, there's good stuff here, right? That you can appreciate games for what they're actually supposed to be, which is primarily like engaging, fun, interesting, compelling, whatever. It's not supposed to be about what is their production value, how big are they? Right?
I remember in 2015, I was playing EVE Online, as this is before we had launched Crashlands, the original Crashlands. I was talking with one of my corporation mates, and he was like, "Oh, what do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I make games, blah, blah." And he's like, "Oh, you have a link to any of your games?" And then I sent him a link to what we were working on with Crashlands, and he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." He's like, "I don't play 2D games." I was like, what an interesting stance.
Yep.
But that was pretty common at that time. People just like fully writing off an entire swath of the game of the possible game space because it's not like AAA enough for you.
Yeah, I think you got stuff like Among Us too. You know what I mean? It's like I think so many people during the pandemic had exposure then in a really fun way to games that appear to be more simple, right? Because they're either 2D, mechanically they look like they're got less going on, but are just as fun, or like the niche they operate in is also viable,
Yeah, and if you
it's shifted,
and if you probably pair that with the sentiment that people hold toward AAA studios, constantly degrading over time,
yes, that's true.
Then it's kind of like I think a lot of people they're just a lot of players have kind of hit that exasperation point where they're like, look, I just want a fun game that's affordable, that doesn't nickel and dime me all the time, that I can just pick up and play and have a good time with. Like, is that so much to ask? Right
and now, that was made by people is the new phase of things coming
made by human beings who give a shit. And so we're still here, like we're still in the back. We're like raising your hand. We're like we'll
got some of that.
We'll make those.
And this you can see in like Chris Sakowski's How to Market a Game blog about this like convergence idea, which is basically this. He's been talking about this a lot in the last couple of weeks, but it's funny that I think you're right that it seems like this was definitely in the soup. We're not the only ones who were like, oh, maybe we could do this. Like it was very clearly a signal, and we wrapped on Crashlands 2 around the time where the signal was like very, very strong. I think Sakowski's article came out like a month or two later or something like that. That now then sparked like even a bigger, broader conversation about it. But it's literally just hitting all the exact same points that we internally had also just been like, yeah, it looks like we can do this in a smaller way now. versus like when we started on Crashlands 2, I remember very specifically, it still feeling like we had, in order to impress like the Steam audience, quote unquote, that we had to push.
We had to go big.
Everything so hard.
We had to go.
Yeah, well, it didn't. I mean, until more recently, it didn't feel like we were that successful with Crashlands 1 on Steam. Like it did well for us as a team, right? But it didn't have like, it didn't feel like it had the sentiment behind it of like, oh hell yeah, here's this like great game on Steam.
That's true.
Like, oh, I mean, there's this game that like turned out to be good. You know,
like within a month of Stardew Valley coming out, right?
Yeah,
and it's like Stardew Valley. It's on everything. Everybody on Earth has played it. Although, like that's a whole, was like several orders of magnitude above like what Crashlands hit.
It's interesting to note too that like the original Crashlands overall review score, the game hasn't changed, right?
Yeah. Its review score just keeps going up.
Just keeps going up, which is fascinating. It's just fascinating.
It's sort of just following player sentiment, right? About
it seems like it, yeah.
What expectations are,
and it was kind of like there was a big divergence between the score on mobile and the score. I even remember like on Metacritic, it was like our PC critic score was like in the 70s, and our mobile score was like 93 on Metacritic. So again, it's kind of like you have these two different groups of players, which like in 2016 were very different groups who were like, there's such a thing as a game, and mobile, whatever's on mobile, that's not a game. That's not a real game, you know? And now people just don't give a fuck anymore. They're just like, is it good?
Which is also funny too, right? Because Crashlands 1 is also showing its age more now 10 years later.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Because now even like when every once in a while, like I'll go spin it up again just to like be like, what does this feel like?
It was made with 540p in mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The resolution is so low, and like, and there's like instantly like noticeable jank that I don't remember noticing in the past. Because even just like how as things are kind of moving around, the way it aliases is like weirdly janky, right? For like text and stuff. And I don't remember noticing that, but now I can't not see it, right? And despite the fact that it still feels like it's aged, even though there's now this like growing appreciation for and sort of breadth of successful stuff that kind of is more in that territory, right? It's still people are still having more and more positive sentiment about it.
For what it's worth,
very surprising.
When we released, just to kind of show how, like, in terms of like the jank and the tech and what's now possible, like back when we made Crashlands, Game Maker didn't have what's called the GUI layer. The layer that you can draw graphical.
That's GUI.
Stuff for the graphical user interface. So all like the health bar and all that shit. Like normally in a game, you separate those out onto their own layer. So that way it doesn't really matter what's going on in the game world or in the camera. Right. All the UI elements are drawn on top. That didn't exist when we made original Crashlands. So like all the buttons and stuff, like they actually have to like move in the game world with the camera.
Yeah, they live in the game.
Like they float. They're basically like floating in front of the camera as like world objects. And then like if we zoomed out, then like the view gets bigger. So we actually had to like scale up the buttons when the camera zooms out
to keep
match
the same size.
Yeah, because they weren't on their own layer, right? And it's like, man, things have changed, you know.
Yeah, so it's interesting because at the time where we basically chose to double down on, in the case of Crashlands 2, was kind of like, to me, like I think the start of the bigger shift away from people caring about production value. Yeah, like I think we're kind of late on that. Basically, we're picking up the tail end of that, like people don't care about this production value thing on Steam, which still felt very, very true in 2020. It's still in 2021. I remember still like feeling like that. But you had these cracks in the armor kind of appearing, right, with Vampire Survivors, which I think was basically in like March or whatever, 2020. Very soon there. And so like, I don't know, things have definitely shifted. And so, yeah, we finished all that stuff with Crashlands 2. It's just heavy lifting. Everyone's tired. And we're like, let's try not giving a fuck. And
let's just have fun and iterate and go fast.
And on top of that was paired with a bunch of additional research, because it's like, we now know, of course, when we first got started, it was like, just mechanically make a thing that's good. Or that was kind of the extent of it. Now, with how competitive everything is, we're like, you know what, we need a better mental structure for how to ideate and think about these games so that we can make something that fucking lands when you tell someone about it, as opposed to having to like sell people on it, because it's just not going to work these days. So we did the Game Maker's Toolkit Jam in August, I believe, or in July, August.
Yeah.
And it's a 5-day jam. And literally the point of that was not just a palate cleanser from like
So we actually did it before we were finished with all the Crashlands updates. It was in the middle of working on the final update.
Yeah. And the big focus there was to use a different kind of mental model for approaching it in terms of the ideation, so that we could try and make something that was just easier to talk about, easier to sell, easier for players to care about.
Yeah, and also that fit with all the modern things you need. So we talked about in the last episode, we're talking about demos, streamers, right? Yeah, so it was things that are really, really demoable and that we could think of how that would work. And
because basically it just felt like for the whole time we've been making games, we've been fighting uphill in so many ways against market forces. So we didn't like making free-to-play stuff, so we made a premium game, but still launched it on mobile.
When Blade is talking about those motherfuckers always ice skating uphill, that's us. We're those people.
We're those people.
We always have been.
Yeah. And so we were like, could we just not do that for once? Let's look around, take a beat, identify what's happening, and try to make something that actually would make our life significantly easier if we decide to invest fully in it. Which sounds insane to be like, finally we did that. But that is what we did in August. How many dudes came out of it? Got 19th, I think, overall. It was the only game that had a PC download.
Yeah, we didn't have a browser version, so people had to install it.
That was in the top 20, I think, in that whole fucking list. There's a little glimpse of it in the GMTK rundown video afterwards. And the response of it was great. It was so good that we were like, I think we got something here.
And then we threw it onto gx.games, which is owned by Opera, and Opera also owns Game Maker. And we know people at Opera, we know people at Game Maker. So we put it up on gx.games, and we just sent a message to some people we know. We're like, hey, you guys have features at the top of gx.games,
put this in there?
You want to put how many dudes up there? And they're like, sure. And so they did. And I got 50,000 players in pretty short order. And so we were like, oh God, we got to do just in case. So we made a Steam page for how many dudes, and we just grabbed screenshots from the Game Jam version. We made a 13-second trailer or something like that. And then we updated the web builds, because we did get web builds made after the jam ended. Was the thing. So we updated the web builds to just once you complete round 10, to have a little pop-up that's just hey, you want to see where this game's going? We're thinking about making it into a full game. You can wishlist on Steam, and you can click that. And so that just started a trickle of wish lists coming into this kind of janky ass jam game that we've just put up on Steam.
Yeah, but I think that the thing we noticed was it was easy. It was easy to talk about. It was easy for people to get into. It was easy for people to stream. All the stuff that we really wanted to hit with it, we hit.
The fact is, we got more people to stream How Many Dudes when we just released it in the jam than we got to stream Crashlands 2 when we released Crashlands 2.
You mean just in terms of quantity? Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. As in plural. With plural people.
Yeah, and the plan wasn't, what do you guys went off to do GMTK? The plan was to do it as a combination palette cleanser and just try to make a thing that hits those criteria.
Yeah, do it in a different way, basically.
But it wasn't actually to have a game that would be our next game. And we actually had a different thing that we thought we were doing as our next game. And it wasn't this. It was just so we had other ideas. And then
can we say what it was? Because I
don't see why not.
This was the idea of the pirate roguelike kind of thing.
We had there were a few ideas, I guess, that we had coming into.
Yeah.
But the goal of this wasn't to have the game. It wasn't to have the next game. Yeah. It was that once we saw that it hit those criterion, that we were like, oh, actually, this probably should be the next game, right?
Yeah.
So, but we still had to wrap up the stuff we're doing with Crashlands 2 and then come back to it.
So it just kind of sat there. It just sat there for until October, really.
Yep.
Just kind of accumulating wish lists very slowly. We weren't pushing any marketing. It was just sitting there. And that was it. So we finished up the final update for Crashlands 2 on September 25th. And then we started figuring out what to do with How Many Dudes. And we started working on it full time in earnest and getting the whole team involved shortly after. So it's basically kind of start of October is kind of the real.
Yeah, it's only been.
So it's been 2.5 months, basically. We've been working on it.
Yep.
And so as of when this episode airs, we will have had the How Many Dudes demo out for a couple of weeks at that point.
Yes, basically essentially 2.5 months to demo, right?
Yeah. And we also
nice. It was several Steam store page up after 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
The demo done after 2.5 months.
Yeah.
We're just moving.
And part of the reason for the the pace is just like, well, because of the type of game that it is, it's very easy for us to test and iterate and add stuff really fast.
Mhm.
And so the game is just kind of like, it's just bursting into existence in kind of an insane pace. But also we did a bunch of sort of early market testing, which you can hear about in some of our more recent episodes, where we made a bunch of YouTube shorts and did a lot of promotion around what we had in the game, just to see if it could land. And yeah, we got YouTube shorts that are like hitting 1 million views, 200,000 views, 300,000 views. And it's just proven to be very easy to at least get people interested in the idea of this game. And whenever we release those shorts, we see a noticeable spike in wishlist traffic and Steam page traffic. And we've never been able to do that before with any other games. Like, we've never been able to drive that kind of traffic. And so we're like, okay, early market tests, very positive. Now we just got to figure out what the path is. And so we landed on the demo as kind of the next thing to do. And we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, that's how we're closing out the year. Because the demo will have been up for basically 2 weeks by the end of 2025. And who knows?
Yeah. And we have a rough internal target for the launch date of how many dudes, but we're not going to reveal it yet, because it's like there's so many open questions about like what happens with the demo, what is it that people want, where are we going to take this game?
Our intent is to do Next Fest at the end of February. Right, we definitely will do that before launching.
So we won't be launching before that.
And we have already we mentioned in a previous episode, we were talking about ad spend and basically the quest of, can you convert dollars into eyeballs on things, and how it seems the answer is no. But we like trying things. So with how many dudes, we are in a basically a paid festival spot.
All right, will that have happened by?
No, it's in February. It happens basically a week and a half before Next Fest, and so we will report on that as far as like how that goes. But we did do it. We decided to pull a trigger on it and see what happens. So we can also report on that. So we basically have these beats lined up then throughout the first couple of months of the year that we'll be just hammering away on, trying to get everything lined up and ready for, make the game as good as we can before the Next Fest demo in particular. But yeah, it's still just up in the air as far as like when we actually launch the thing. Is internally, there's benchmarks we want to hit before we launch it, because it wouldn't make sense to bother, right?
Yeah,
so we want to hit like 50,000
wish list counts, potentially like amount of content, so like how much game is there, and all that stuff.
So we'll just kind of play it by ear and see what happens.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting year, good year, lots of ups, lots of downs, lots of pivots, lots of changes. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And then as far as kind of like what's coming next year, we'll see. We'll talk about it next episode.
Yeah.
So that's all the time we have for this week's episode. We'd like to thank our producers, Fat Bard and Sampa DaCosta, for putting the podcast together, and thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the Discord, a way for you to donate, and links to the podcast archives. And if you haven't yet, head on over to Steam, pick up the How Many Dudes demo. Let us know what you think. By this point, it will have been out for a couple of weeks, and so we will probably have iterated on it a bit, and it'll be even better than when we released it. So I hope you enjoy it. So thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.